I have like deep imposter syndrome, like many people, I think, in these type of roles, especially people in engineering. Like I'm always like, how am I here? The only way to really solve this is like obviously getting like anonymous feedback via my coach, but also just going and talking to other leaders to really understand like what they're dealing with and like realizing, oh, I handled this situation this way and actually went really well. Like I actually might know what I'm doing. Like I should trust my gut more. And just going, talking and sharing stories with people has like really helped me personally be like, have more confidence and like, I actually, my intuition is right. I am doing a good job.
Hi, I'm Jubin, operating partner at Kleiner Perkins, and I'm excited that you're tuning into Grit. The goal of this is not for it to be a highlight reel of how successful my guests are, rather a candid exploration of how hard it is, both personally and professionally, to create, build, and scale world-class organizations. If you're a fan of the show, please subscribe, leave a review, and make sure to follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Thanks. Well, I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah.
I'm excited to do it.
All right, we'll see how it goes. First time for me doing a podcast.
Ever? When I listen to podcasts, and I'm much more comfortable on my side than your side because I get to just ask questions. When you were thinking about this like last night or whatever, maybe you weren't. But when I listen to podcasts, I always think like, oh, how would I answer XYZ question? Do you feel that? Does that even enter your...
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, because I'm not fully sure like what we're exactly going to talk about.
Yeah, me neither.
So for me, it was very hard to like emphasize this. But at the same time, I was doing an all hands today and there was questions that needed to be answered. So like I was laying in bed, just like playing out the scenarios. Like the
truth. You had the questions.
Yeah. So
doesn't that make it worse though?
It does, because then I can't sleep. This like sprawling web, I can't like, I see it in my head of like, all the ways I can answer this question, like I just edited constantly. And this is the kind of person I am. So like to me, when I'm doing like a real time thing, if it's more casual like this, I can kind of just be myself.
Totally.
Otherwise, I kind of like have to sit there and like think.
How big is Discord now?
Like employees?
Yeah. We are about, I think, 820 right now.
Relative to like Twitter or a Snapchat or something.
Yeah.
How many users do they, like, give me like a ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, the last number we shared publicly was 200 million users, monthly active.
I have a stepbrother who's much younger than me. Yeah. He's in high school.
Yeah.
And he's a gamer.
Yeah.
And I called him last night and I'm like, hey, have you like heard of Discord? And it was like one of the dumbest questions I could have possibly asked him. Like, you know, like, because he basically lives in it. Like, this is legitimately how he communicates with his entire crew of friends. And even crazier, and tell me if you disagree, but he like likes a girl as an example. And instead of like going on a date or something, they're like playing video games, hanging out on Discord together. That blew my mind.
But it's like a real bonding moment. I mean, like Discord exists because like that's how I grew up. That's how I found a lot of my earliest relationships in life.
Really?
Yeah. It's here for a reason. It's like not arbitrary, like, oh, let's build like a social app for gaming. It was like a very personal thing for me, like myself.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say we didn't expect is we were building originally, like we're building an app. But when we on the street walk into someone, they see a Discord logo on our hoodie, we started calling this Discord moment because people would stop us and just tell us what Discord means to them. Like no one's stopping someone talking about some other social app and saying this is what it means to me. I was like at GDC and I was on a panel there, and afterwards people walked up to me just 2 weeks ago and they were like, I'm like, they're gonna ask questions about the panel. They're like, hey, I just wanted to come up and say thank you. Discord is my home. And I'm like, it was very humbling as always, but it's also like, oh, it's hard not to tear up on like the way they say it.
Yeah.
So
does the gravity of that like responsibility weigh on you now? Like, oh my gosh, like.
Oh, totally. I mean, the beauty is like almost everyone at the company is one of these people. They came here because that's what it meant to them and they wanted to contribute to it.
Yeah.
As we work on the product and the decisions we make, like we're affecting people's homes. It's not just like their interface.
Yeah.
They're building like part of their life on it. And like, it definitely weighs on us and with every single decision.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I want to talk about like how it started for you, but it does strike me that this started as a thing that you were using, that you needed to use, that you had to then go build.
Yeah.
To kind of collaborate with people when you were playing video games with them, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're in the middle of a giant company that like last raised at whatever, $15 billion, has raised almost $1 billion of capital. You have all of these users that are counting on you.
Yeah.
You're up at night thinking about like the all hands and stuff. Sometimes you must just be like, what the hell? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, we always had aspirations, but they were never this high. Like I remember when we started, like, oh, like, there must be a TAM of like 40 million people for this. And like, what if we could achieve that? And we always joked around like, we'll never let the company cross 100 employees.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of surreal. I think like the pandemic kind of made it more interesting because like when we were all in the office, you could see the company growing slowly over time. And then the pandemic happened in the like,
it went gangbusters.
Our user base exploded. Our employee to keep up with that, our employee base exploded. And then we finally, when people were willing to go outside, we had like bring people together. And I'm like, I brought my team together first, just like the teams I'm responsible for, and they were already double the size of the company before the pandemic. Like, who are all these people? And I know a lot of them, but I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. Now, like, I feel responsible for the outcome of all this more than ever because all the people that are like really chosen to do this with us, and then all the people that we service. And like, people always ask me, how does it feel? I'm like, I kind of forget to stop and think because I'm just always thinking like, what are we doing next? How do I make sure we don't screw this up? I would say.
Yeah. Do you ever get a break from that feeling?
No, I don't think so. I think I've been trying to not work all the time.
Yeah.
And find time to just hang out and chill.
Yeah.
And I've been better at that, especially needing it during the pandemic, like many people did. But no, I'm always thinking about it. I think the thing behind it is like, and you might have heard this from other people you've talked to, is like, my goal in life was to never work a day in my life.
Yeah.
Stress can be good.
Right? Well, so let me ask you, like, when you want to not work all the time, do you play video games still?
Oh, totally.
No, and then aren't you on Discord?
Yeah. So technically I'm always on. But I think like that's like part of like the beauty of all of it, if you think about it. The funny thing I'll tell you is like from when I kind of started my career and started trying to build something, like I've tried to build something like Discord before Discord, I stopped playing games. I just started working all the time and building all the time and like writing code, building things. And then during Discord for like 5 years, I did not play games even then. So the product I was building for myself, I was not using it for that. And then during the pandemic, I really got back into it because I needed to have a way to hang out with people. And it really, truly was, even for me, like a mental lifesaver. And now after work hours, I actually just jump in an empty voice channel on Discord. And within like 20 minutes, there's like a bunch of friends that show up because that's just how people use Discord. And we're just shooting the shit. And it's like the most awesome feeling. I don't even know how to describe it. We call it like the magic moment in many ways. So.
And do you abstain the analogy of like part Slack, part Zoom, part a bunch of tools? I think that's almost selling Discord short.
Yeah.
But how do you like describe it for someone that hasn't used it?
Yeah, I think that's like a really hard thing to describe. Discord actually started before Slack existed. I love that product. But when I joined this company before it was Discord, because we pivoted into Discord, I joined the company and they're using an app called FlowDoc, and probably no one remembers that. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a gaming app like this FlowDoc thing, but all the voice stuff we were using for gaming, and it was one.
Yeah.
And that's really what it came down to. But as we were really trying to describe what Discord is, and we struggle to do so sometimes because it's like a feeling, like we just discussed. It depends on the audience we talk to. Like if we're talking to someone who doesn't understand gaming, some people have just said, is this like Slack for gamers?
Yeah.
But really, we think it's more of a combination of, when we talk to people in gaming in the beginning, it's a combination of like IRC message boards and like AIM, and then all the voice tools like that people use. And this is why it was created. We were using like 5-6 different tools to communicate. And we're like, this had to be better.
In the company or when you were gaming?
When we were gaming, before this existed. Like, when I started, I was renting Ventrilo servers, which is a voice app that everyone used for gaming. It works similar to Discord, but it just had voice chat.
Yeah.
Then we were using AIM and MSN to chat. And because you're meeting people online. When I started, no one had cell phones, so no one's texting each other. And then we had message boards, and we were doing all of this stuff. And eventually people got cell phones, and we started sharing numbers, and it was kind of awkward because we met online. And then it was like 2010, and I'm like, how is this still a thing in 2010? Like, there has to be a better way. So I was trying to build something better. And eventually, while working with Jason at this company, before it became Discord, I was like, I know it's 2015, and I know everyone's crazed about mobile apps. But what if we solve this problem?
Yeah.
And we solved it across mobile and desktop. And it was kind of a crazy idea at the time. Like, why would you build a desktop app in 2015?
Yeah.
But it was really to solve this very acute need that no one's really paid attention to for a long time.
What company was it that you were working on before Discord?
So the company before Discord is called Hammer and Chisel. It's the same company, just pivoted. The mission was to connect people through games. We were working on building PC quality games on tablets.
Okay. And what was Fates Forever?
So that's the game we built.
So it was a studio that was building games?
Yeah. It was basically a startup trying to lean into the emergence of the iPad and mobile gaming. And how can we bring like PC console quality games to mobile?
Okay.
Probably ahead of our time. That came maybe like 6-7 years later.
Yeah. And what, that wasn't working?
So we built this beautiful game. You can still find probably YouTube videos of it if you might have seen them. It was kind of shocking. I joined the company because I saw what the team was doing, and they were like, I'm like, you got this working on an iPad? But the game was we like to say it was a critical success because everyone was like amazed by it.
Yeah.
But it was a commercial failure. And we ultimately had to decide what we were doing next. But Discord is like a natural pivot into that because we were really trying to connect people through games. And it didn't have to be through a game. We could be the thing that sits as like effectively the social layer of all of gaming.
Yeah.
So we just went to that directly.
How hard was it to the amount of calories invested in building this beautiful game, but not being able to solve for distribution and then letting go of that?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, I don't think distribution was the problem. The problem was retention, as it was always with building. If you can build something cool, people might use it, but eventually they retain. They like you doing this over and over. I mean, it was tough. We did the thing that every founder and company does, like give us those reasons to try change it, like A or B way or C way. Just one more thing and it'll work. And eventually we did have to come to terms like, this is probably not the time in the world where this kind of game will work. Yeah. We need to build different types of games. Yeah. It was actually the first conclusion. Yeah. The idea to do Discord kind of came in parallel. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Super cool. Yeah. So you were not technically a founder of the first company?
Yeah. I joined as a infrastructure engineer, but you know, like you join a startup and you join on some role and then you're like, how do I wear as many hats as possible? I tried to do a company, like a bootstrapped company before this. It became like a lifestyle business, and I moved to the Bay Area to like meet people and learn. Yeah. So like I took this opportunity of these people that had the same mission as I did. Like Jason had the same mission as I did. I'm like, I'm gonna learn from these people that know how to build companies, and I'm gonna do everything I can to figure this out. And when the opportunity arose, I talked to Jason about an alternative path that we could take, and he took a shot on it, and I ultimately became the co-founder of the pivoted company. Yeah. So.
Must feel like a distant memory, but that also feels like it was yesterday, huh?
Oh, definitely, especially with the COVID. Like I feel like I lost 5 years.
Totally. Yeah, so. You mentioned, I think you said stress is good. Yeah. Do you feel like there's an upside to stress?
Oh yeah, I think there's good and bad stress. Some people don't, but a lot of people do thrive under like good pressure. Like as long as you're excited about what you're doing, you understand what you're doing. It's almost a puzzle. Like, can I make this happen? And as long as you're making good progress towards that, and it's stressful, like. I love that personally, and you can meet a lot of people. When stress sucks is like when it's out of your control, really, like you feel powerless.
Is the whole company running on Discord?
Yes, and we run the whole company on Discord. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Does it really help if you're a gamer to join?
Definitely. Yes and no. I'll frame it differently. I think it helps if someone who understands the internet culture, because gaming often like just is kind of similar to just being online and understanding internet culture. As long as you understand that, you can understand Discord. Yeah. Gaming is a plus, but it's not a requirement. Yeah. So
that makes sense. Right now, you're man. I mean, how much are you hands on keyboard?
The last time it was probably during the winter break, basically the holiday break. Yeah. I did do some stuff that seeded some work. Especially in the last year, I've traded more of that towards more being hands-on, more in like leading projects directly, not just delegating all the way to. So like, the way we work is we're very player coach leaders. So it's not like we just delegate all the way down. We actually have a lot of our leaders drive things directly with their teams. I'm focused currently on a lot of work around helping bring Discord into games. So like I'm actually working with the team on that. Just talking to partners, but also defining the roadmap. So I spend time there. I've always been not just an engineering leader. I'm like a generalist, to be honest. I thrive on like working with design and product and as well as engineering and data. Yeah. So.
But like, do you think like people leadership is a natural muscle for you?
So I didn't think so.
Yeah.
I used to joke when I was younger that I led a lot of groups in games. And you have to convince like 50 people to come on time to do the thing in the game. Yeah. It's kind of like running a company. You have attendance and like you have to convince and recruit people. So I did a lot of that through my childhood. So I learned a lot of leadership through playing games. Yeah. And I meet a lot of other leaders who can say the same thing if they were into games when they were younger. But it was a lot easier to do when you're not face to face, you're not dealing as many emotions. When I see stepping into this role, I was like, well, I like this. And like the gratification of writing code and having it run is different than coaching someone through their career and seeing the results really in 6 to 9 months. I had to really, one, learn to do that, and also then realize I always say I'm not bad at it, but my coach will say like, you're remarkably good at it.
Yeah.
But I always say like, I'm bad at it. And once you do that enough times, like I found actually more satisfaction from that than writing code, because like you're really having impact on people's lives at that point.
Yeah.
And it's really high leverage, to be honest. So
can you double click on the dissonance between like you viewing yourself as not very good at leading, but your coach, who's objectively a pretty good measuring stick of quality of leadership, telling you you're great?
I'll just kind of like, I'm pretty open about it. I have like deep imposter syndrome, like many people, I think, in these type of roles, especially people in engineering. Like I'm always like, how am I here? Like, how did I get here? Like, why? Like, I don't know.
How are these people working for me?
Yeah, like I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. Like this person clearly has more experience than me. Like, why should just do what they say? And I always like doubt myself.
Yeah.
I am like my worst critic, and honestly, a lot of people I've hired are very similar. They're their own worst critics.
Yeah.
So I just always assume I'm not doing good enough, and that's something I have to always contend with, and like really be good at celebrating, not just for myself, but also when giving positive reaffirmation for team members as they're doing it.
Another way of saying it is like the anxious overachiever.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, where you're anxious about overachieving.
Yeah. I've actually found like that, like the only way to really solve this is like obviously getting like anonymous feedback via my coach, but also just going and talking to other leaders to really understand like what they're dealing with, and like realizing, oh, I handled this situation this way and actually went really well. Like I actually might know what I'm doing. Like I should trust my gut more. And just going, talking, and sharing stories with people has like really helped me personally be like have more confidence, and like I actually, my intuition is right. I am doing a good job. So.
Do you think that feeling of imposter, do you think it's grown over time, or do you think it's diminished over time? Like, do you think as you have successfully navigated the company into the point that it's in now, gives you more confidence, or do you think like, oh shit, the stakes are higher, therefore, you know, to our earlier point?
Yeah. Sometimes, like I mentioned, the scale of what we're doing does not always set in, because we're always just worried about.
It's almost like it's a defense mechanism. It can't.
Yeah, exactly. I'll actually call back the reason I'm more comfortable and like is not because we're this large and working, is that I kind of put in the effort of trying to find counterfactuals to my mindset through my coach, through talking to people.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like talking to people, like how did you solve problem X? Like how did you, as you scaled your engineering team, how did you implement a performance program for like these are kind of, some people would argue boring things, but they're very critical when you're building the company. Talking to other leaders at companies you think are much more successful or much larger and have it cracked, and like realizing they're dealing with the same problems and maybe even solve them in ways that are subpar, and like actually giving them advice. That kind of makes it feel like, oh, okay, that's what I mean by counterfactual.
Yeah, I do think there's something, I agree with you. I think there's something refreshing about going to other leaders in Silicon Valley tech companies.
Yeah.
Because if it's just you behind closed doors talking, most of the time, they all have the same feeling of like, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, most of the time, it's a amazing high growth company that's maybe building a new category that has no peers, that has no people to your left or right in the swim lanes. It's never been done before. So like the default state is not knowing. Like you're figuring it out.
Exactly.
You know?
And especially if like, this is also the first time you've ever done anything at that scale. Because some people, like they've had a career and then they went to a startup. But if you're like, I'm just learning management and leadership and how to build this thing all at the same time, and like actually there's no time to go talk to people, it's kind of this kind of wild thing.
But isn't that maybe some way like a weapon for you? Because
you're not tarnished by the
there's no sacred cows, there's no principles. Like you're just kind of using your gut plus all of the context of this time of this company and making decisions. And even if people give you advice, whether it's venture capitalists or other operators, that advice, even if it's the exact same revenue scale of your company, is so context dependent.
100%. That is the narrative that's always been in my mind. Actually, when we started, like as most young people that start a company, they were like, we're rebels. Like we were saying things like, we're not going to have managers, because we all didn't like having managers at companies we worked at. And some things like not having constantly have a different viewpoint can turn out better and a superpower, and other things can take you in a circle to end up at the same conclusion.
Same place. Like you don't have to reinvent HR.
Exactly.
You don't have to reinvent certain IT things. You don't have to reinvent management.
Exactly.
Legal is legal.
So like you have to balance it. So I think it's a superpower, and can also be like something like like honestly a waste of time too.
Yeah, Claire Hughes Johnson, the old Stripes COO, was telling me how the Collisons insisted on, I think it was rewriting HR performance management or something.
Yeah.
She's like, guys, I think you're smart enough to do this. And we could definitely go do this. But like, there's a pretty good system out there with an off-the-shelf set of tools that we can just go like use. We have probably 10 other fish to fry that are more pressing than this thing right now that we want to reinvent. Just because we can, it doesn't mean we should. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's like the thing that always happened. I think we probably did a couple of like not invented here syndrome things as well.
Like what? Anything can come to mind?
I don't think we actually invented this. I think we tried to mimic, I think Spotify's like model that they were talking about with tribes and guild. It was a whole thing. And the whole thing centered around like, well, the managers are just coaches for people. And actually all the decision makers are like all the ICs they manage. And we're like, that's a great idea. That didn't go so well because the managers just really focused on people happy, not driving output. Actually, that came from doubting our gut of like, you could hire extremely technical managers because everyone's like, they're really hard to find. It's not scalable. And I was like, okay, I guess you're all right. But after a while that I'm working, I'm like, we're going to actually only hire people that we believe are extremely technical in their roles, even if they're super senior. And we found them. I mean, it was easier once we were known and people wanted to work with us. But it was just an example of something that we were, in retrospect, probably did a bad, just wasted a little bit of time. So.
Can I revisit the, like, when you were younger, getting groups of people together in a gaming room? You were a, like, prolific gamer. Were you not?
Yeah.
Were you not, like, one of the Final Fantasy's best players, like, ever?
Yeah. I mean, so the game that I played is Final Fantasy XI. It's an MMORPG. And over the time of that, I used to play that game, like, I think 18 hours a day. At GDC, I told people at the panel that when I quit the game, you can type /playtime on the game and it'll tell you how long you played it in game. And it was 1,300 days of in-game time.
Days?
That's what people at the panel said. Because normally people have game time in hours. Mine was days. Because I played it from its release to like, I think late 2009.
How old were you?
How old was I? I think I was like 14 when I started.
14?
Yeah, 14 when I started. And then probably like starting college when I finally quit.
And were your parents around?
Yes, my parents were very much around.
what like now, this idea of being a gamer, you can stream yourself. There's at least some precedent of like people that are gamers or creators or whatever. This was not. I mean,
I think the thing that
were they supportive or not, I guess is the question.
I think, so the way this actually started is like something that people don't know about me is I was born with a heart defect. That's why we came to the US to resolve that. And actually I started playing that game when I was sitting at home and I had like a device attached to me and I couldn't go outside. So they're like, okay, you just play the game. But I started playing it a lot. And I think what they saw is it wasn't just playing a game. I had friendships. My dad didn't always fully understand it. My mom embraced it. And the real reason they were totally fine was like, I was always a builder. Like when I was young, I loved Legos. When it was a .com boom, my parents were not technical, tried to become programmers. But I went to class with them because I was like, I want to learn this stuff. So they saw me always working on the game and then building stuff to optimize how we were playing the game, to how organized. So they're like, well, he's like building people skills and making friendships and getting better at programming. So like, it's not, normally people would do this, but why would we stop this? So,
where did you move from?
Ukraine.
You moved from Ukraine for a heart defect?
Yeah, I was 5 years old when we moved to the LA.
Why?
I mean, the Soviet Union fell, and my parents needed to get access to doctors to solve the heart defect.
It just wasn't available there.
Yeah, like it was like a really tough time, right? The Soviet Union it was collapsing and all that stuff. Yeah.
So you were 5, but you're saying at 14, you were still using video games as a way.
I didn't get the surgery till I was like 9 or 10, actually. And then when I was 13 was when I had to like go through the final double check everything. So I had like monitors and stuff on me. And like as a result, like my parents didn't want me to have a lot of physical activity because it's a hard thing. And my parents they were immigrants, so they were always working, so they couldn't take me places. And LA, LA is massive. So like they're not going to drive me 2 hours to see my friends. So like the internet was kind of where I could socialize. Right?
Were you old enough to worry from the ages of 5 to 13? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I don't think I fully grasped what it meant until
Can I ask what?
It was like a valve, heart valve, like birth defects with the heart valves.
Yeah.
I had to get some interesting surgery where they like did it like from the side and it was open heart surgery. I don't remember all the details about it, to be honest, but I was told at the time, if this doesn't get fixed, I probably wouldn't live past 17 or 18.
Wow.
So like it was like a life-threatening surgery. It wasn't like a make me healthier surgery. So,
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
my parents immigrated here from Iran.
Yeah.
Like leaving not a great situation
Yeah.
as well. And I am, I think, a default anxious person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my default state is to worry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like generally speaking, if something is going on in my life, it's very hard for me to have like a positive outlook on
Yeah.
it. My default state is just kind of anxious about it, you know? Anyway, I wonder sometimes, does that come from when you have immigrant parents, and then specifically in your case, immigrant parents that are then worried
Yeah.
about your condition?
Yeah.
Can you inherit that? You know?
Yeah. I think I never actually saw them be too worried. And
That's cool.
maybe they were just hiding it or I just don't remember it. But I did know there was a consequence to the condition. Like I knew that. I didn't really maybe fully internalize it, but I did on some level. And at the company, we joke, like I'm always someone that's thinking about all the system and everything, like trying to think about everything. But I'm never really worried about that stuff. After you kind of grow up knowing you could not live past a certain age, you kind of just think about things are just going to happen. You need to make the best of it and just move forward. Just like focus on the next thing. I don't worry as much about initial things because I think as long as you're focused on the right thing and trying your best, things will work out. And at the company, when we were smaller, especially, we had the YOLO emoji in our Discord server, like a Slack emoji. And I would just say, like, you're all overthinking this, YOLO. And like, just like, what's the worst that can happen if you try this?
Yeah, ship it.
Just ship it. 5% of users will have an outage. We'll learn quickly and solve it and make it better for everyone, then wait 30 days of worrying and trying to prevent it.
Yeah.
And that was weird to people, but I was like, it's very much like what's the worst that can happen when you grew up thinking you won't live past a certain age?
Yeah. I'm just doing, as you're talking, I'm doing math in my head, but from 14 to 19,
Yeah.
you were playing Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Which one was it? 7? 11?
11 is the online one.
Okay.
Yeah.
11. And you played for how many days?
1,300 days. Is the
1,300 days.
Yeah.
So that's whatever, 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Times, call it 300.
Yeah.
So we're at like, I don't know, 1,800 days.
Yeah.
Days.
Yeah.
What were your hours? What were your, like, that is
Well,
so intense.
There's like a part to this because the game was like really my home on some level. And like, it was always like also running when I was doing other things on my computer. Like I would run it in window mode and I was always, you can talk to people in it. You just hang out when you're not doing stuff. But also the game was, it was international. So people from Japan played with people in the US. So like, and the game was a not modern game where there was scarcity. Things only happened or certain people could do them. So like you had to wake up at 5 a.m. if you want to do the thing that only happens at 5 a.m. So like I had a whole team of people that I recruited that also want to do this stuff. Like we would set our alarms for 5 a.m. to wake up before school and go do shit for 2 hours. And then we'd go to sleep and then go to school. So it was pretty much like a 24/7 thing.
Wow.
But it was awesome.
Did you have dreams about the game?
All the time. So
Why did you stop?
I think as all games, they eventually like can't keep up with the updates or like they die off. And
Or you became the best player in the world?
that was part of it, but it was also fun because like it wasn't just about me being the best player, just having the group and bringing us up all together, kind of like building a company.
Right.
Was in itself fun. I slowed things down because I'm like, okay, I'm at the age of where my life is actually starting. What do I do with myself? And I always knew I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to start a company. These things I always wanted to do. I'm like, I got to start doing them. And that was like, how do I turn this stuff and what I'm passionate about into making this easier? Because it was so positive. Back then, people would have been like, this is crazy. You spent all this time, but like it was so positive on my life. I'm like, how do I make this easier for other people?
And at the time, you were, I mean, you didn't probably register it then, but you were struggling with the communications between your team.
It was just like a lot of effort to do it.
Yeah.
And the tools that I was building, like connecting the message board and the chat products together for the team to make it easier. The other groups were like, can I buy that off you? That's really what kind of inspired me to try to like make this.
Well, and didn't Slack also start from a gaming company?
Yeah, I believe so. I think they made a game called Glitch.
Yeah. Super interesting. And your original mechanism of deciding that you were going to be building and company building and engineering was through the video game first.
Yeah.
Creating the video game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then eventually you decided you want to do more of the plumbing and piping around it.
So me personally, I'm like a counterfactual. Like you talk to a lot of people who are engineers and like, how did you get into this? Like, I realized I could make video games, and people quickly realize video games are not that fun to make for most people. It's like really tough and a lot of work, and like the cycles are large. So I personally never wanted to make a video game, but I did join this company that was making a video game because I was impressed by what they were doing, but also because the mission aligned with my own. Because at the end of the day, the game was multiplayer. It was supposed to bring people together. So that's why I joined this company. My first attempt was to basically build a social network for people who play games. Like I had the whole feed, the web chat. This is before mobile really was a thing. I was trying to make like a social connective app for people who play games and like to help better organize your groups on these games.
Yeah.
That was my first attempt. And as any early founder, I overbuilt everything and spent too much time on things I shouldn't have. But I did learn a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. When the idea started to bake in around what ultimately is Discord.
Yeah.
Walk me through the okay, your company's using it.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then what's the timeline from there of like evolution?
Oh, yeah. So our company actually wasn't using Discord. I think at that time we were still on Flowdoc, that app.
Okay.
What actually happened was like the previous product I built, it was very feature rich. I did it with a friend in college, and like it was a bootstrap startup, and it had like a feed, kind of like a social network, like Facebook. It had chat, it had tracking tools, calendars, schedules. It just had so much stuff. And I reflected it later, like what did matter to people on this app? Like what were they actually using? And it was the text chat and the voice chat to stay organized and in a combined way. And like they really couldn't do it with any other app because everything else was disjoint. And when we were building the game, we were trying to also like, how do we get people on voice chat? How they can communicate? And after we were done with the game and like I was inspired by this Flowdoc thing, I pitched Jason like I think in December 2014. I'm like, what if we kind of brought this together into one unified experience and like really skip the game? Because our goal was to the stuff we were going to build in the game to extract it and make it a standalone thing. And I mean, after a couple of weeks of talking about what the opportunity could be, how do we think about it? He kind of just like let me go work on it in the beginning of January, like me and our designer. And I kind of by February had it kind of functional, but it wasn't fully working. By the end of March, I've had siphoned off more engineers. And then eventually I siphoned Jason because he's also an engineer. And 3 months in, we kind of had it working. And we were trying to get friends to use it. They were lapsing constantly. Like nothing is a hit out of the gate. People assume everything is an overnight success.
Lapsing meaning?
Like we would ask our friends, can you use this for your group? And they're like, I'll try it. And then like they would not, after like, I'm not using this again.
Yeah.
Here's all the problems with it. Right.
And then you're like, shit, like, are we actually not onto something?
Exactly. I'm like, okay, why is it not working? What's missing? We obviously went and did more customer development with other friends of friends. Because you can, when you are your own customer, you probably know other customers. So you can kind of just go and like, that itself is a superpower, right? And like, why wouldn't these people use it? What are they running into? And we started getting like a list and we started constantly stack ranking this list. But we didn't want to just do this forever, like with the game of like, you can forever say there's one more thing that will solve this, right? So we just kept stacking this list and we actually had a cutoff on this list of like, these are the things we think are most likely to get our friends to use this product. And if one of these doesn't work and other people don't use it, maybe we're not onto something. And we spent like another 2 months, like, trying things, friends lapsing, trying things, friends lapsing. We eventually got some friends to stick on it. And we realized a couple of features that were critical. Also some obvious things like if it doesn't work for one person, everyone's lapsing. Mm-hmm. So we had to make sure it always worked for everyone. Stuff like that really got us. But so by, I think May, so 5 months in, we were ready to launch basically. So
how'd you launch?
So the launch was a little bit random because while our friends were kind of using it, we still weren't like getting a lot of people to stick around that we were trying to get to use it because they were still going back. They didn't have complaints anymore. They were just like, it's easier to stay on the thing we have. I think Jason was a little bit worried. Maybe we're still not onto something. And I was panicking. To be honest, I was like, oh, this is the thing I've been trying to make forever. I did like a Hail Mary move. I talked to one of the people from the communities that was in the Final Fantasy communities. And I was like, hey, I know you actually have been using this. So could you just go on Reddit and just talk about your experience with it? And just like, have you guys heard about this product? And like genuinely, because you were using it. And he's like, sure, I can do that. And funny enough, he did that while I was sleeping because I think he was in Europe. And I woke up and he did post it and had no replies. And I was like, oh man,
It actually might be dead.
It actually might be dead. And you can find this on Reddit. It's a public post by me. And there's typos in it, which I think I was like panicking. And I just replied to them like, hey, I'm one of the founders of this. Just click this link and join it and I will be there to talk to you. And I just put it there and I sat in the voice channel on a browser. And my thought was like, okay, no one's really used voice chat in a browser before. Like the technology for that had just come out and that's what we were leveraging. I'm like, if I just sit here, people come and talk to me and I can convince them. And I sat there for a little bit and people started showing up and they would just join the voice channel and they're like, hey, what is this? Like, what am I doing here? And I just pitched them on it. Like, this is what it is. This is how it works. And then they're like, this is wild. This is so cool. And they would just go on Reddit, upvote it, reply. I just spoke to one of the founders. It's cool. Then Jason woke up. He joined me and we just spent the day talking to people the whole day. And the post actually went all the way to the top
of Reddit
on that subreddit. It was a Final Fantasy subreddit. And after that day, the numbers just kept going up and up on Discord. Like people were registering and retaining and registering and retaining. And then we just had to put fuel on the fire. So that's our launch day.
That is insane. How many people that day were joining? Do you remember?
I think the first day, because the beauty of our product is like, there's like group leaders and they convince 10 to 20 people to come and join.
Right. There's like an inherent virality to it.
It's like a disjoint virality. It's not like the same as a normal social app where you join and you get all your friends to join. It's like, do I bring my group? And often those people will not invite other people because they've just been invited. But we convinced maybe dozens of people and then other people saw the post. So I think at the first day, there was a couple hundred people who joined, which was a big deal. Like we went from like just our friends.
You and Jason are talking to a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
Throughout the day.
It was dozens, but they invited a couple hundred.
Right.
And the next day, like we didn't have to do that again because those people and people who saw the post invited other people.
How'd you feel that night? Like eating dinner that night? Were you doubtful? Like, were you like, no, like that was a fluke?
No, I think in that moment I was like, oh man, it's working. This is the YOLO thing we talk about. I mean, this is a thing that I would love to use. I'm one of these users. Like, there's no way this is wrong. We're just doing something wrong. We're talking about it wrong. We have not convinced enough people. But I think the whole premise was the product has to sell itself. Our whole thing was like, no one's going to install another app. It's kind of annoying to install apps, right? This had to work in the browser. This is the right place, right time. Like 2 years before, this wouldn't have worked. The fact that you could send someone a link and they had to install nothing and they could hear someone's voice in a browser and they pay for nothing, they install nothing, was actually a big deal back then. I was like, this has to work. And that's what happened. Once people felt that magic, they're like, this is amazing. Like, how do I tell my friends about this? So I do think there's like all success is a combination of hard work and luck.
Yeah.
Right. And being the right place, right time.
Yeah.
So.
And then next day, people keep going.
Yeah.
Was it obvious that they should use this for gaming?
Yeah. It was a very like all of our homepage, everything was positioned around this is how you use it for gaming. The value props. I think from that point on, it actually was a seed of how we interact with our users. Like Jason was on Twitter 24/7 replying to every single person. And the way we built our CX team after that was like, you have to interact with people like individuals, not just tickets. We would take things we kept hearing from people and we'd feed it back into our marketing. So whatever's working. And the whole idea is like, how do we be authentic? Because the gaming community doesn't tolerate inauthenticity.
Yeah.
They want to know that you actually get what they're doing. We just kept being ourselves. And when people identified actual other value propositions on Discord that we didn't realize, we had to incorporate it back into the marketing like as soon as possible. And we speak about ourselves. For example, we built our architecture to be server driven. And we realized actually this is completely something we didn't originally understand, that people were frustrated with Skype at the time because it was peer-to-peer. And when gamers got mad, they would steal each other's IP addresses and they would DDoS each other and take down their internet. So we're like, oh, this was not originally something that we intentionally designed around, but we solved this problem. So we immediately marketed against that. So
interesting. And at what point did you actually think like, oh shit, we have enough users that we have to start like supporting them? How did that evolve into like, oh my God, like we got to go build a company?
Well, I mean, the fortunate thing is Jason's built a company before. So we were very intentional how we were building the company from the very beginning, like even from 10 to 20 to 30. And we didn't want to be one of those companies that just got a lot of funding, saw success and just hired thousands of people.
Yeah.
And we actually grew the company very slowly and intentionally. Like we would often pause hiring to like coach people and train people. Some would argue we were acting like a much more mature company than we needed to be. Probably because Jason had the experience of the things he thinks he did incorrectly the first time where he wanted to get them right. So like, I think we got to deeply benefit from that.
Yeah.
So.
And when did you first raise money?
The company was funded from the beginning because Jason raised money to build the game.
Right. When you did the event, because you raised from all the kind of like you've a bunch of the marquee VCs.
Yeah.
Just like speaking for my partners and I, like most of us are not the target audience, you know?
Yeah.
Did they get it immediately?
Well, our first major one was Benchmark, and
Yeah.
Mitch gets gaming.
Yeah.
And actually he invested in the game, not Discord.
Right.
He believed in us as a team to let us build Discord. So he got it. So like just him being there and like really embracing this, encouraging it was a big like a factor.
Yeah.
As we talk to others, people are like, "Oh, what are you? You're kind of like a social network. Maybe you'll be more than gaming later." So it really took a lot of convincing on who we are. But it was kind of hard to ignore the growth we were seeing and like what it was. But now like gaming continues to become much more mainstream.
Who could have thought
Yeah.
that it's such a big category?
I mean, we thought.
You're right. You thought.
No, what I mean by that is I remember quoting Jason when people say like gaming is a niche. I'm like drinking water. It's the biggest media category and has been for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think people don't view it that way because it's not as for a long time it was just seen as something that people did at home and they're not social. But people who play games are often the most social. They're spending 10, 20 hours with other people online hanging out. So we kind of, I don't think we're fully responsible for this. I think the world just evolved and like Gen Z got older and millennials got older. Like as people grew up, it became more normalized and we were just right place, right time to fuel that. So
Yeah. And as the thing kept going crazy, then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And it went super crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think without sharing exact numbers, I think the day COVID hit, we increased our user base by 50% in like a day or two.
Were you running on AWS?
No, we're on GCP.
Okay. And you just flexed right up, no problem?
So interestingly enough, it goes back to like all the way back to our conversation about imposter syndrome. For the year prior, we were actually having a lot of struggles and outages because we hired a lot of people with experience and they were like trying to build the perfect next system. And they were not building what we needed right now to support where we are at a company. And like I think I broke down with the team. I'm like, this is not working. We need to make Discord more stable. And like 3 months before the pandemic, the team did a whole sprint on increasing stability and making sure we could handle load.
Wow.
Those projects finished in the end of February. And like 2 weeks later, this happened. And for our core infrastructure, like the messaging part of Discord, that just scaled up because like the team was ready for it because of the way we've built Discord. For our voice and video infrastructure, that was a little bit more tricky because we use dedicated servers. But we had a team because it was just like calling vendors and getting more servers and just adding them into our basically pool of servers. But they did it. The users at no point experienced any outages. It was kind of a remarkable feat on the team and what they accomplished during that week.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
So, yeah, it was kind of wild.
And when you were getting to the point where you were hiring these engineers and clearly they saw the growth.
Yeah.
Clearly they resonated with the mission. So you're getting this intersection of a person who's probably in it for the mission, in it for the right reasons, sees the user growth. So they're like, okay, there's an opportunity to build a big company here, make a lot of money, whatever it is, right? And do you think like they're so proficient, some of these engineers, some of the people that you would hire are so good that they were like too good for that moment in time? When you say like too perfect, when they were architecting systems that were too perfect.
Those people I hired were not the greatest because they came from companies where they saw a playbook. And to your point, approaching things differently, especially where you're trying to do new things, is better. Basically, all of these people are still here today. The original people that I hired, I would joke that we used to play Moneyball because like we couldn't afford to compete with certain people. So we were hiring actually people who just deeply love what we were doing and were like remarkably good and might not even have experience.
Yeah.
And
you're hiring for slope.
Exactly. And so the first set of people like
Moneyball.
I mean, that's what we were doing. It's like, okay, we can't compete.
You're finding undervalued assets in the market.
Exactly.
But isn't that what every startup needs to do? Like, haven't we almost, like, even right now, everyone's like, we're competing so hard for AI talent with OpenAI and stuff. It's like, well, AI talent in its current version is like 2 years old, you know? And so shouldn't you be hiring for Slope anyway instead of competing with Anthropic and OpenAI?
100%. And sometimes you do need people with experience in specific things that are just hard to get. But like the beauty of people who build things, especially engineers, but also other disciplines, is like they often do what they do for a living for fun. So they're on GitHub, they're building open source projects, they're contributing to things. You hire the people that are completely mission aligned and just love what they're doing for a living, and you still pay them well and treat them well.
Yeah.
They're actually not actually even there because the slope of the company is high. When you're hiring people that just care about the slope of the company, you're probably hiring the wrong people because they're out the moment that's not happening. Some of our like most tenured employees, our principal engineers, our VPs and directors have been here a long time, and they grew up with the company and through its ups and downs. And that's like kind of what we optimize for.
Did you figure out ways to test for slope? Because if you don't have pedigree and resume,
I mean,
and obviously take away mission, like they're passionate about it.
At least for engineers, I have this question that is a pretty high hit rate. I always ask, like, how did you get into what you're doing and why do you keep doing it? And usually if they tell the story of how they started doing it when they were 12, there's almost no way they're not going to be great at it. There's obviously people who are not, but usually if someone did it from their own volition and they put all their time and effort, they're like 5-6 years ahead of most people at any single point. And the way they learn, what they know, how much information, because they're not bound by, I'm just this type of engineer. They often will like learn anything, do anything.
Totally.
That question usually tells me the world.
Interesting.
So,
by the way, I don't actually think that's unique to engineers. I think success has clues.
Yeah.
If you're looking for entrepreneurs or CEOs, there's generally patterns of entrepreneurship in their life, whether they were selling Girl Scout cookies or wrapping paper or whatever it might be. It's pretty consistent.
Yeah. And when someone says they started something when they're 12, okay, well, they kind of go out of their way. They're proactive.
Right.
Those are all the traits you want. So I usually ask for those kind of things.
You had mentioned that you were up all night because you were pivoting back towards gaming. Did at some point it become so big that you thought maybe we can increase our TAM, or what was tell me about this process.
Yeah, we've always known that Discord was useful for more than gaming. At the end of the day, it's a chat app with voice and video chat, and like can scale to any size. And I think 5 months in, like the first thing that made us fully realize this is when the React JavaScript community moved from Slack to Discord. And like this is 5 months into Discord, and we're like, why are you here? They're like, well, because all the tools you build for gaming to make sure people have moderation controls and it works at scale, actually great for running a programming community. Like, okay, cool. You're all welcome here. But we're not going to focus on you because our mission is to build a games distribution business. That's what we were running towards. And we always embraced these other things that were happening that were adjacent, but we really focused on that customer. And as we were approaching like 2019, well, like we had this like moment where we launched our game store and it didn't do so well. And not every shot you take. And we had to really reassess like, where are we going next? And we really decided to embrace all these other things that were happening on Discord. This was even pre-pandemic. People would always assume like, oh, Discord, like every other company, expanded beyond its core during the pandemic. We started this in like early 2019. But over the many years that followed, we still saw tremendous growth and we saw a lot of things happening on Discord. But what actually happened was internally, we kind of lost focus, like many other companies. Like, who is our core customer? How do we make clear decisions? How do we prioritize? And it was always a debate. It slows us down. And toward the end of last year, we kind of reassessed like what is the most driving stuff on Discord. 93% of our users are people who still say they play games all the time. So we're like, how do we service the users that trust us the most? And so like we kind of decided to focus because focus is king.
How did you get to that 93% number?
It's a combination of surveying plus as well as people saying what games they're playing on Discord.
Okay. So you surveyed some of the users.
Yeah.
I don't know. In hindsight, wouldn't you probably take that shot over again?
Which one specifically?
Expanding beyond potentially the gaming core? Don't you need to at least test the margins of...
I mean, going back to the almost YOLO discussion, like I wouldn't like look back and say that was a wrong choice. Like the reason you are where you are is because of the choices you made prior. And I think if we never tried to do it that way, we would have always wanted to do it. So like we learned a lot along the way. And Discord is still used for more than gaming by most people because people who play games, they're not unique. No one says I'm a moviegoer, right? All these people do other things. They have other hobbies. They have other friend groups. They still bring them onto Discord, but their primary thing is gaming. Their primary hobby or one of their main hobbies. And that's like the main takeaway. Like, we're not saying this other stuff doesn't belong, but the customer we're going to optimize the product for.
Yeah.
Because I'll give you an example. People always ask us like, oh, when I join Discord, how do I find my friends? Well, every other social app will offer contact sync, right? And like find your friends. But Discord's pseudo-anonymous, which is a very gaming specific and online specific trait. So people have their aliases. So when you contact sync, like, people don't want to sync with their real life friend identities. That already makes it more difficult as a product for non-specific use cases. And then you're contending like, well, who is this product for?
Yeah.
So like, if you know and you have deep clarity who your primary customer is, you can make trade-offs against that.
Yeah. This might be a dumb question, but do you consider yourself a social network?
We consider ourselves a social platform.
Okay. At what point did you have the realization, oh shit, we have a responsibility that comes, for example, a large part of the company does content moderation, right? Like, it's a big chunk, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, as we got larger, like, this became very important to us. Like, I think in 2017 is when we decided we really truly understood what this meant. From that point on, we have whole product areas dedicated to safety. We have obviously operations teams. And I believe 15% of our company is just
15% is doing content moderation.
And not just content moderation, it's also building like the automated systems and all of that stuff.
Right.
And like every social platform, we have a responsibility because like at 200 million people, that's like a massive country. No country is without any bad actors. Any good tool can be used for bad acts. So like, we have a responsibility to help make sure that happens.
When did you decide to like start making money?
Well, I mean, I think I alluded to this earlier. Like, even when Jason and I talked about doing the Discord project, we're like, okay, what's the business model here? And the original thesis of the company before Discord was to build a game that is social, extract the social components, give them to others, and then become a distribution channel, because distribution channels are durable.
Yeah.
Right? So with Discord, we're like, well, we're skipping the game. We're going to build the social component of it all, and then we'll become a distribution channel. And so we were working for many years towards a very specific point where we would have enough users to build a game distribution, like a game store. And we built one in 2018. We spent the whole company's resources doing it. And we launched it, and it didn't do so hot. And most companies, again, would spend a year grinding at this. And we were immediately like, yeah, we're out. Like, we're not going to burn our time here. We reassessed at the time, and we saw our like other business, this very tiny business, which Nitro, our subscription, was actually doing pretty well. But we updated it like once a year.
It was just a subscription thing.
Yeah, it's just on the side. We just made it as a way for people to contribute to Discord while we were developing it.
Yeah.
Until we got to this game store. And it was actually doing pretty well because.
But the game store in your mind was always the thing.
It was the thing. It was the thing. And we looked at Nitro like, what if this was the thing? So we decided to just like redirect our resources to making Nitro a better product, get more features, and make it available on more platforms. And at every point, people were like, there's no way it could make this much money. I don't think we've disclosed the amount of money it makes, so I'm not going to. But every stage, like, there's no way it would get to this much. There's no way it would get to this much.
But again, going to the conversation earlier, like, if you listen to conventional wisdom, you probably might have, like, figured out how to do, like, ads or something.
Yeah.
Like, you would have figured out the conventional ways to monetize.
Yeah. And we didn't want to do the normal brute force. We wanted to align user interests with our product interests, because if we will allow, we'll build the right things, basically. So
how much of the company was building the gaming thing?
The game store? I think we're a tiny company. I think we were like sub 100. We were like 100 people back then. I think like at least 50% of the company was working.
50%.
Yeah.
And then you built it for a year. So like half the company.
Yeah, from January, and we launched in October.
So like almost a year.
Yeah.
Half the company is working on this thing.
Yeah.
You like raise money on the back of it, probably, whatever, right? And then how long before you were like, kill it?
So the honest answer is we ran a pilot in like August, and it wasn't looking so hot, but we kind of ignored it, and we still launched in October. I think a week in, we're like, this is probably not going to work. It was devastating to everyone at the company, because like
you hired people to do that.
We hired people to do that. We also hired people many years ago. That's the plan, and like that was the plan, and people were like, the plan didn't work. It was like devastating to people. But now we look at it as like one of our proudest moments, because like we went from that to within 3 months having a deprecation plan.
I will say that's pretty quick to have the confidence.
Yeah.
That's impressive to be able to do that.
Yeah. And when you're a startup, you really can't, time is against you, right? Like you have to make decisions quickly. You have to take the new information.
Yeah, but the problem with startups is that it's very emotional.
It is
right?
very emotional.
Like you hired all these people, you sold the dream. By the way, I'm sure you had to let go of some of those people, right? Like you have this product, you invested in the product, you promised investors. It's very emotional.
Yeah.
You get very tangled up in that.
I don't know if Jason's ever spoken to this. I think he actually went back to investors, offered to give the money back. And like they said no. They wanted they were like they believed in what it could become beyond this, and it almost felt like they're like, yeah, you're now over this phase of doing the game store thing, go to the next thing. And I think it's a testament to like how they saw us operate and build the product. They're like they're gonna.
How'd you feel during that time before you made the decision to pull it?
I mean, it was kind of devastating, and to be honest, for me, it was more devastating now that it didn't work because like it was devastating just seeing how other people were taking the result. And it's not because they were like upset that their payday was gone. They were upset that this product that they love was potentially not going to work out.
Yeah.
Like it did not have a sustainable path forward.
Isn't that the burden of leadership?
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to your question at the very beginning, I was not asleep for many nights thinking like, what's our path forward? How did Jason and I and our, at that time, Eros, who you met, who was our CMO at the time, how do we lead the company towards like what the next stage is? What is the next stage?
Yeah. And you have to put on a brave face even when you're not sure.
Yeah, exactly. And like be like, oh, it'll work out when you don't really know. So
you mentioned Midjourney. I find the way that Discord is being pulled into this AI frenzy super interesting. Mm-hmm. What do you make of this? Like, what do you make of how Discord is being leveraged with? Maybe can you go through how Midjourney? What is Midjourney? How do they use it?
Yeah, so Midjourney is, hopefully most people are listening to this, a really awesome Gen AI. I guess it started as a Discord, but it's really a Gen AI model to generate really beautiful and realistic images, probably the one of the best in class ones. And the way it really launched is like you joined a Discord server and you interacted with this bot and you gave it a prompt and it spit out.
It was the interface that you would use as an input to then go get an image out as an output.
Exactly. But the cool part is like when you did that, other people saw you do that. Like, I can do that
because it's the community aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like we always from the very beginning made Discord built on an open API because we're like we can't build everything in the way people want to set up their homes. So we'll make this open and stuff will happen. And like Midjourney is an example of that and the way they took advantage of it. And like it kind of went out of control and this because people were amazed by these images, but also they could participate, they could watch, they could riff, and like this Discord server grew to like I think they have close to 20 million members right now. But actually what people don't even realize is ever since they made their Discord bot available outside of the Discord server, it's actually reaching even more people because people are installing it in their own private servers and making images. So it's kind of this wild thing. But I can say like why I believe we're being pulled into this AI stuff as well as other things we've been pulled into. It really comes down to the thing I kind of mentioned at the beginning where 5 months in, the React community moved to Discord. And if you think about what Discord is based on, it's like, well, people online who need to get together and collaborate and do it in a way where they have control and they can create a place. That's not just a gaming need, right? That's pretty much any community or collaboration. And I think if you go look on GitHub, almost every single major project has a Discord server. And what is the AI community if not collaboration together to build stuff together? And so Discord is the place to come together to do stuff together, whether that's a game or something else. And especially if it's collaborative, creative, it does it really well.
Can I add to this?
Yeah.
If the future of what this technology can do is that it simplifies the everyday person leveraging this incredibly powerful machinery to do things that we could never imagine before.
Totally.
And the way that it's simplifying it is by using voice, text, video as an input to feed these things to go then create amazing outputs.
Yeah.
You sure seem to have a pretty interesting playground for that.
Totally.
As the API into the world.
Totally. Yeah. And so that's why many other companies have kind of taken the similar approach to Midjourney, like created communities and like kind of let people interact with that stuff using our APIs and bring them to our Discord server. So it is interesting, and we'll see how this stuff evolves. Does it stay in text and chat form to become more like device? You've seen some devices pop up.
Right.
We'll see how well those do.
Right. Because the alternative right now is what, like a ChatGPT native interface.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. But that one is less collaborative. It's less community.
I don't know what other people are doing.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
right.
Yeah, so exactly. I think the other one, I think that's really popular for us because it also generates a lot of memes internally. We use Discord to build Discord, so we don't get to leverage all the workplace tools. Like we love to dog food our own product. So we obviously have our own bots that record meetings and generate notes and feed into other systems. But these bots also just usually turn these into stories, and they usually becomes like clippable memes people share at the time. So like we obviously like try to automate as much as with AI as possible.
Yeah.
So
yeah. From all the people that I've talked to, you are a very prescient technologist and have a lot of foresight into what the world will look like. Do you have any takes of like, as you see the world with AI today, 5 to 10 years from now, that you think a lot of people would disagree with?
I don't know if they'll disagree with it. Maybe some will. Like, I think the reality is if you think about what happens usually is like stuff usually gets adopted actually by gaming pretty early. And it's like a precursor to how other things happen. I think a lot of these tools are actually going to accelerate virtual worlds being built and the quality of games, the fidelity of games, which ultimately will probably combine with whatever the next 10th version of the Vision Pro or the Meta Quest. And this is all going to combine into actually having meaningful virtual worlds and places that people can hang out with. And we're going to be comfortable with that. I don't know if that's going to happen in the next 10 years, but that's what I expect to be the largest adopters of this really quickly.
You had mentioned, hey, a lot of the investors or employees are comfortable with the internet world and internet communities. Yeah. Maybe put another way, like in 5 to 10 years, everybody will default be a part of that internet community.
But also be comfortable like being on that even in like in virtual worlds. Like you probably see game studios spending hundreds of millions of dollars to produce games because like the fidelity and the cost of those games just gone up so much. But the cost to develop those games, once we get this nailed down, will come down. That will also then fuel creating virtual worlds and experiences, which ultimately will allow people to actually hang out in virtual worlds and not just sitting on a voice channel.
Super cool. I'm thrilled to see what's next for you all. Super exciting.
We're very excited as well.
Are you hiring?
We're hiring, but obviously not as much as before.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And if folks listen to this and get excited about working at Discord, reach out to you, go to the jobs page.
Yeah. If you're passionate about what we're doing, like, and you're like truly love the product, discord.com/jobs. There's plenty of roles there still.
Awesome. And when you hear the word grit, what comes to mind?
Oh man, good question. Two things. I think like at the end of the day, perseverance. We talked about all the rocky, my personal life with knowing I might not live to a certain age if things don't get solved, to like Discord not working out. Like it's going to work out. You're just going to keep grinding at it and just like not let stuff knock you down. That's what comes to mind. And like I'll like share a personal story that for me that really nailed it home. And you know, you're very impressionable when you're young, when your parents tell you things. When I was very young, I was doing something and I dropped a toy that I really loved. And my mom just walked up to me and she's like, well, it's broken. It was a toy that came from Ukraine, so we're never not going to get the same one back. And she's like, well, it's broken. It's not going to get fixed. You really shouldn't dwell on it. Like, figure out what you're doing next. It was like a weird thing that she said to me, but I replays it in my mind. So whenever something goes not the way I expected, like to me, grit is like I just persevere through that. I'm like, okay, what am I doing next? I'm not going to look back on the previous thing. You want to learn from the previous experiences, but just go forward.
Stan, I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to come back every Monday morning to listen to a new guest, or go back into the archives when we've done more than 100 episodes. This podcast is a Kleiner Perkins production, and the episode was edited by Eric Johnson from Lightning Pod. Thank you all.